So before we move on, we do want to make sure that this web page is looking great on all screen sizes. So we want to make sure that all of the responsive design is taken care of from the tablet, the desktop and the mobile. So this is obviously, some of this is going to be quite new if you are new to working with containers, because of course, we are now working with containers where their responsive design is quite different to what we're used to with columns and inner sections. So if you are more used to and accustomed to inner sections and columns, then you're going to see here how quite differently we actually do this design element for responsive design. So let's actually get on with that right now. So what we can do, we can flick over to our tablet now and we can see how these elements look on a tablet screen size. So if you remember, we already took care of our hero, so that is already looking fine on a tablet. But if we move down, we can now see under the scroller here that we are only displaying two logos at a time. So I think that would look better if we displayed three. So that is a quick fix. All we have to do is select that, come down to slides per view, and we can change this to the number that we want. So I think maybe 4 would look good there. And the same with slides to scroll. I'm just going to do one at a time, and that's going to just scroll one at a time and display 4 at any given time as well. So that is okay. I'm happy with that. Now looking at this section, so these are the services that we provide. Looking at this now, we can see that it would actually be very difficult to, let's say we wanted to display this in 2 rows as 2 columns. So it would be one image there, one down here and one down there. So if we did actually want to design something like that, we would actually have to edit this slightly now. So let's show you how we would do that. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm going to come back to desktop here, because it means adding a couple more containers here. So follow along with me here, because this is how we would make this responsive to how we wanted it. If you was happy with it looking like this as 4 columns, then of course you don't need to do anything. I mean, you can still achieve the same thing by doing what I'm about to do here. It means we have to add an extra couple of containers. So to do that, I'm going to just drag 2 containers into the section, into the outer container. I'm just going to duplicate that. And now I'm just going to drag these elements into these new containers. So I'm going to drag the first 2 into the first one, and then the second 2 into the second container. Oh, didn't move that one. That's it, just like that. Now for each of these new containers, I'm going to change the direction to horizontal. And that is going to then make that look like it did before. I'm also going to change these gaps to 0 so that not that gap, that's the wrong gap. The outer container here, the parent container, I'm going to change that to 0, because as you can see here, this gap here is bigger than what we're seeing in between these two. So let's make that 0 so that zeroes out that gap. And now that is looking exactly the same, right? So it doesn't look any different to how it did before. Only now, when we come along to our tablet, we have these 2 new containers that we can now flex the direction with. So what we can actually do now is we can come up to the parent container, and instead of having the direction as horizontal, if we move this now to vertical, it's literally just going to drop each container below each other so that we can create that design that we wanted. Now, if this was the design that you was hoping to get, then this is exactly how you would do it. If you was happy with the 4 columns, then of course you wouldn't need those additional 2 containers. So you need to sort of think ahead a little bit, and when you do come to your responsive design, you might need to make some tweaks with your containers to be able to get that final design that you was hoping for. So that is how we would work with our containers here. That is looking fine. I'm happy with that. So we can move on to the next. So looking at this, I would probably add a little bit of padding to the left hand side of this container. So to do that, let's go ahead, come along to advanced, uncheck the padding, and then now let's add some of that to the left hand side. So I'm thinking maybe 35. That is okay for me. And with the image here, so the image is still looking quite large, but what we actually want to do is we want to add a flex shrink here so that this container shrinks as the screen sizes increases and decreases. And of course, that is going to be relative to the number that we give it. So it will be like a ratio. So to do that, let's just select this container. We're going to come along to advanced. And then under the size here, we're going to select a custom size and we want to select the flex shrink. So by default, these are always 1 and 1. So by default, if you don't set a value here, it would always be 1. And that is what we are seeing here for all screen sizes. But if we was to increase the grow, then it would take up more space as the screen sizes increases. When space becomes available, and the flex shrink, it means would shrink as that screen size reduces in size. So let's just have a look and play around with that now. So if we select the flex shrink as 2, we can see now this is 2 times smaller than this other side. So that is how that flex would work, and that is probably looking a lot better than what it was before. So I'm going to add a little bit of padding on the right hand side of this again, because we can see that's just a little bit too close to the border for my liking. So again, I'm going to come up to the top, I'm going to uncheck the padding, and I'm going to apply the same 35 to the right there. So that for me is looking a lot better. That is okay. If you wanted to, of course, tweak the sizes of the fonts and everything else, you could do that under your globals. If you're not using globals, you could, of course, just do it straight from the text editor or the element that you want to change, right? So that is completely up to you. I'm not going to waste either of our times by messing around with that, because you should know how to do that. So we're going to do exactly the same with this one now. So let's apply that same shrink value to this first container now. I'm going to come to advanced of that container, going to select custom size with a flex shrink of 2 so that it looks like that. I'm going to add the same 35 padding to the left hand side on this one, and then I'm going to add 35 to the other container that is on the right hand side and apply that padding on the right hand side so that it looks like that. And again, that is much better. I'm happy with that. So we can move on to the next. Now, there isn't anything really that I would do with this. I mean, of course, if you wanted to change the size properties, of course, you could make that shrink a bit so it looked like that. You can play around with it to get it how you want. In fact, it probably looks better with a flex shrink of 2 applied to that second container. So that is okay. Of course, if you didn't want to, let's just say, for example, you wanted that to be stacked at this point, we could literally just come to the top level container and change the direction to vertical. We could then align this to the center so that it would look like, we'd have to align the self, sorry. In fact, if we select the button here, we can align that to, under advanced, we can select align self to the center, and we could, of course, design and play around with it like that. If we wanted it to the left, we could have it like that. So it is very, very easy to customize the flow, the direction, the alignments of each of these items. It is just a different way of doing it if you are not familiar with working with containers. Now, I'm not going to use a different direction for this top level. I'm going to keep this horizontal. I need to now, of course, align this into the center. So let's align center so it looks like that. And I'm also going to apply that size there with a flex shrink of 2 so that it looks like that. So I'm happy with that. That looks okay. We can move down to the next. So in fact, I wouldn't do anything with this. This is looking fine. We could in fact add a bit more padding to the left and right hand sides, but I'm not going to worry about that now. Looking at this, you could have just 2 columns at a time, so 1, 1, and then this one and that one in a new row, and this one and this one, and all that would mean is adding them to their own containers again. So these 2 in their own container, this one and this one in their own container, and this one and this one in their own container, just like what we done up here. So by adding these 2 into their own container, because then we can change the direction of the parent container. So this container here, we could have then changed this to a direction of vertical, and it would stack each of those new containers that we've added with 2 elements inside of each, and we could get a 2-column layout. So that is how you can play around with responsive design. So I'm actually happy with that, so that is fine. I'm not going to change that. That looks fine with a 3-column layout for me. But of course, you can make that 2-column, like I said, by adding 3 new containers and dragging 2 elements into each at a time. Now, moving down to this last one, we can see that we have some images which are somewhere off the screen there. So let's scroll down and use our navigator over here and see where they are. So it would be the bottom container. Of course, I haven't added a text here to let us know, so I'm going to add that now. Testimonial. This container was, of course, our services. So let's add services there. And then this container, contact. Just to give us some order, right? So that we know which section is what. So let's come back down to the testimonials. Let's see what images have flown off the screen there. So that image is still on screen. That's okay. That one is on the screen. This one is somewhere off the screen. So let's come to advanced. If we come down to the orientation, we can see where it is. So we can see just by moving that, she appears. So that one is back again. That's fine. And then this one, where has she disappeared to? Let's come back to advanced. And there she is. So again, play around with these, get them to where you want them to be. I'm going to jiggle them around a little bit. Let's move her down, or move her down a bit, and then to the left a bit. So that is okay for me. I'm happy with that. And that is all looking a lot better now for tablet. So now let's just check out the screen size for mobile. And of course, everything should just be stacked on top of one another. So this is looking fine. This is looking fine. We could see what this looks like with a 2 slides per view. Just have a look. In fact, 2 does work okay. We could also go with we could change that 2 at a time, right? I'm just going to leave that as a 1. These look fine stacked on top. This looks fine. Of course, this has that extra padding on the left now, so we could move that, or in fact, just add a new linked value together. Maybe add 15 there or 20. I think 15 would be okay. We could do the same now with this one. So of course, we need to reduce that. No, sorry, it's not that one. It is this one. So I am going to change this all to 15 as well. Now, of course, we've got this extra margin up the top. This is coming from the parent container. So, of course, we can reduce that as well. Going to take that out completely, actually. You might want to make these images smaller. Let's just remove that padding on the right so that it doesn't have that extra padding. In fact, we can just go ahead and add a new padding of 50. Oh, that wasn't a linked. Add a linked 15 all the way around. Do exactly the same with this second one. Unlink that, link it again, and let's add 15 all the way around. You may want to make that a bit smaller because the image there does look quite big. So let's just select the image itself. Let's come to style. Let's change that width now and give it a new width of maybe 156. And that is still centered. So that is okay. We can do the same with this one. Select the actual image, come to style and change that to 160. And that looks okay. In fact, 180. I think the below image is slightly bigger. So that is okay. We can see we've got some extra margin here. We could probably take that out as well. That's probably coming from the parent container. There it is. So let's go ahead and just add some new smaller padding. So maybe just 60 on the top. And then on the bottom, maybe 60 on the bottom. So that is okay. That is okay. We probably want to add some padding or margin, doesn't make a difference, for this bottom container as well. So let's do that now. Let's go with the bottom and let's change that to 60. So that is all looking good. Now we may want to center align this, so we would need to align self under this button. So we could select this so that it looks like that. We could center align the text absolutely as well. That is all looking okay. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. Same thing with these. We could move all of these different images back into position again because they've gone whizzing off screen again. which is okay, doesn't make a difference. We can do that. Let's quickly move that in, see where that's not the right one. Select the image below. There she is. We bring her in there. Let's just move that top one across a little bit. Horizontal. Let's move you there. And then that last image, let's see where she's disappeared to. There she is. And she looks like that. And again, that's looking much better. In fact, we could move this image a little bit more to the left. And that is looking good again. So now we have our page fully responsive, and now you've had a little sneak peek into how we can really play around with containers to get those kind of responsive designs that we want to for all of the web pages that we are building. So now that that is taken care of, we can get moving on to our case studies page, where we are going to deep dive into the world of custom post types and custom fields and everything like that. So we have complete control over our website, and we can quite literally create any kind of website that we are trying to build.